Good afternoon, LinkedIn, and thanks for tuning in live to me today. And I wanted to share with you my guest for this week's podcast, which is coming out on Friday. His name is Chris Pinner. And Chris, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Of course. I'm Chris. I'm the founder of employee wellbeing company Innofit. Basic belief is that if you feel well, you work well. And we had a nice conversation about a month ago about that, didn't we?
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. And the recording of that podcast is coming out this Friday, as I said. And I was speaking with you and Tamsin on your wellbeing webinar there last week. So really great opportunity there. I suppose, wanted to give people an idea of what to expect from the podcast that's coming out on Friday.
Yeah, 100%. So we covered a lot of ground, I mean, in the space of not that long. But we spoke about the challenges that we've experienced employees facing at the moment. So Innofit, we did a bit of research in September and heard that leadership, buy-in, mental well-being, motivation, culture and connection are all big themes. So a lot of them probably won't come as a surprise when you listen to the podcast, but actually we try and supplement that with some practical tips, tools, tactics, some of the big mistakes we saw people making and do see people making right now, but then a more positive slant, the actions that people are taking to really get ahead of the curve and almost now plan 2021 because it is just around the corner.
It really is just around the corner. And I see a lot of stuff recently where people just think that COVID is going to go away. They're wishing 2020 away, and they're kind of waiting for the first of the first 21 as if COVID is suddenly going to disappear at that stage. But the reality is it's only a couple of months away. There's no end in sight at the moment.
Yeah, and the milestones piece was something we talked about too. And again, it still stands from the conversations even we're having today.
Yeah.
Like, how do you add certainty when there is none? And we mentioned leadership, and we focused a little bit of that in the forum as well and in the podcast too. So how do you create certainty when there is none? Why is that important right now? Getting on the front foot, being proactive rather than reactive has definitely been a theme. And you can always say that that's important, but I think now more than ever, it's key to get on the front foot, because we all know what it's like to chase our tail, trying to organize wellbeing days and wellbeing weeks a month out because there's an awareness day about it. But actually, what we're seeing companies or proactive companies really do now is think 6 months ahead, not always necessarily a year ahead, because it is going to be, we can't know what's a year ahead, but 6 months is a realistic time frame to actually plan for, because we do sadly probably have a good idea of what the next 6 months is going to be like.
This is it, yeah. And it makes total sense to be proactive rather than reactive. And like you say, Chris, it feels like you're chasing your tail. That certainly, in my experience, leads to a lot of overwhelm, where you're just trying to fight fires and you're trying to get stuff at the last minute when it doesn't necessarily work out too well. So the importance of kind of planning things in advance. And I don't think that's something that we necessarily covered on the podcast, but it's something that's really, really important to bear in mind, I think.
Yeah, big time. We did cover listening though, I think, as well. And we spoke about pulse surveys and how so many people had asked questions without answering them necessarily. Is a bit of a danger and a bit of a mistake to make.
Yeah.
And I think there's a bit of a gap at the moment, which we hinted at, for people to do something. So if someone said, I'm struggling with my workload, or you've got a gut instinct that someone's struggling with their workload because they might not be comfortable sharing it. It's about putting the things in place, whether that's mental health first aiders or just conversation, like space for conversation, or quizzes, as you mentioned, I think at one point. I know we all have probably had enough of quizzes at some point, but
you can never have too many quizzes. I love quizzes. And I suppose it's thinking about it from both sides. So like, one of the things that we were saying about developing strategies around this is it's not just a case of like, let's do a survey and let's find a solution quickly. It's about really understanding what people need by listening to them, by having those conversations, whether it's through focus groups, surveys, or like actual conversations, but then also the individuals, and taking personal responsibility for your own well-being and feeling that you're in a safe environment to say, actually, I'm not coping with the work at the moment. I'm not coping with the workload. I need some help, without fear of judgment, without fear of kind of reprimand or anything like that.
And the authenticity and the culture of trust and the engagement was something that we talk about too. So the engagement point's interesting because it really links to inclusion.
Yeah.
was the point that you've got, if you want an engaging wellbeing calendar, then it's got to be engaging for the people that it's for, which sounds like really obvious, but actually it links perfectly to this point about listening and not actually answering questions, because you can have the best survey in the world. If it doesn't have anything to do with the calendar you put in place, then you're not going to see a change in your engagement levels. And then making sure that the sessions themselves are actually engaging. Again, it sounds really obvious, but people want to attend something that's interesting, and then they'll talk about it with their friends if it is, so they'll come to the next one, and that's how you organically grow your engagement levels. And that's kind of forgotten quite a lot of the time, but the foundation always has to be that culture of trust and culture of well-being, as you hinted at.
Well, I mean, going back to something you said earlier, Chris, the importance of having practical recommendations, and I think that that's something that you really stand for. It's really clear in anything that you say, that it's founded in stuff that's really practical. So like being able to take immediate action based on something that you talk about. And I'm sure that the programs that you deliver and the workshops that you deliver are very much like that as well.
Yeah, because you want to try and do both, don't you? Because you've got, and you know this personally as well, very much like evidence-based, like know your stuff and base it in knowledge. And then it's about tying that with, okay, practically what do we do now? So thinking about quick, easy, impactful solutions that you can quickly iterate on, like the word test and learn, or the words test and learn have come up recently as well. And I think it links back to what we were talking about with regards to thinking on your feet and doing things quickly and not putting too much pressure on a perfect strategy, whatever that looks like, because it might well end up just sitting on the shelf. The best thing you can do is just pull something together, know where you're going, and then iterate, test, learn, and improve it as you go.
This is it, and get feedback along the way from the people who've taken part.
Because you've got a culture of trust and people feel comfortable talking and listening. Exactly. It really does tie all together. Well, I feel like we could talk for another 45 minutes now.
And maybe we will do another live at some stage, Chris. Any other thoughts on why people should listen to the podcast? So we'll be out on Friday. It's scheduled to release at 6 a.m. GMT. I'm not anticipating that people will be up at that time, but obviously there are different time zones that listen to the podcast. People are listening to it all over the world. Yeah, exactly. Why not 6 a.m.? I don't think I'll be up at 6 a.m. on Friday, but maybe other people are.
No, I think overall, like if I was thinking, why would I want to listen to a podcast? It'd be because it resonates with the position I'm in. It has an understanding and empathy for the problems I've got and the challenges I face right now. And without too much fluffy language, gives me some practical tips to go and implement to solve them. That's why I would listen to a podcast. And I hope and I think that we did a reasonable job of doing that.
I'd like to think so. Yeah, between the two of us. I mean, I'm not going to toot my own horn, but certainly, Chris, from your perspective, I think you provided some really solid examples. Of some programs, of some tips of what can go wrong and what can go right, and the benefits of having a wellbeing program as well.
Oh, team effort.
Brilliant. We'll leave it there for today, but thank you so much, Chris, for your time today. And I'd love to get people's comments and feedback when the podcast comes out on Friday.